We can have endless discussions about how to slice the pie better. And like those debates could go on forever. And there are lots of different ways you can slice it. But the simpler way that lifts all boats is grow that pie, baby.
Yeah.
Because if we grow it, then everyone can get a bigger slice.
Well, let's switch, Nicola, to the housing market. So Mike talks to a lot of first home buyers. A lot of the listeners will be thinking about, how do I get on the property ladder? There is in New Zealand this piece around everybody should be able to own their first home. And I look at it going forward and I go well, if house prices go up 5% a year, incomes go up a couple of percent a year, will it just become more unaffordable over time? And then I also think about other places in the world, especially in Europe, where renting long-term is okay. It's just the way it is and people don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Do you think, obviously in your world, property, first home buying is a very big topic. Do you think that the right to own your first home is going to continue into the future?
I really want it to, because for me, home ownership, yes, that's about a financial asset, but it also goes often to people's sense of security in their community, security of tenure, security of place. We know that people, when they are able to stay in one place, their kids are more likely to have continuity in their school attendance. There are all sorts of health outcomes that come with secure housing. Now, that can be rental housing, yes, but that aspiration of home ownership is one that I, as a country, think we should hold on to. And the thing is, it doesn't need to be impossible for New Zealand, because unlike many countries, we have abundant land, okay? So we don't lack for the places to build. And what's more, we have intentionally restricted how much housing we can build, both in terms of inside cities, where very strict rules about how high the buildings can be, how dense they can be, and how much we can allow our cities to expand. So my view is, actually, if we get rid of some of those restrictions and allow more land to be available for housing, we can build a lot more affordably. And so that's the mission our government's on, is if you up the supply of housing, then more people will be able to enter that market.
Yeah, and we when we're talking to builders and people building houses, one of the major frustrations they have is around the red tape. It is around just it's so hard to get it consented, get it through council, get it going, and it really does slow the process down.
Yeah, and there's two parts to that. The first is the Resource Management Act, which is an act that was, put in with good intentions, but you can correlate on the graph when housing unaffordability became a massive problem with when the Resource Management Act was introduced, because it essentially allowed people to weaponize what were meant to be environmental laws against housing development. And you saw that happen again and again. So we're replacing that act completely. We think it's really stood in the way of good progress and good development and good housing. Then the second layer is the building consents. And again, partly we make that really complex for builders, but partly also we haven't allowed that whole sector to be as competitive as it could be in terms of restrictions on what kind of building materials you can import and the like. So we feel optimistic that there's still a lot more that we can do to make housing affordable in New Zealand.
It's very easy for us to go, release some land, make it easy to build some houses, build up instead of out.
Yeah.
But I assume if it was pretty straightforward, it would all be done like that. How complicated is this stuff in your role?
Oh, look, it is very complicated. So in government, you have to choose what are the things that are worth doing that are mission critical to the country, and then invest your time in them, because there isn't a shortage of problems or undeveloped opportunity. We have to really focus in. So when we came to government, we were very clear in our minds that the Resource Management Act was something that needed to be replaced, because it touches not just housing, but whole other areas of New Zealand's economic progress. And replacing it, it's funny. I get someone basically once a fortnight who's like, have you replaced the RMA yet? And it's like, okay, we have to replace an entire act and 30 years worth of jurisprudence and decision-making. We can't do that in 5 minutes. I would love to, but it wouldn't be a good law.
That's not an overnight thing.
More problems than it would solve. And so, we're working through that. We will introduce that legislation this year. That's a 2-year turnaround, and that is people having, ministers having meetings with officials every night. That is officials working all day, every day. That is huge amounts of work, but man, oh man, will it be worth it.
Yeah. When, quite often when we hear these types of changes are being made, there's always another side who's like, no, we don't like this. We don't want this to happen. Do you think that sometimes when you guys are working to, make a positive change and make an impact, that it gets misconstrued, or people just go, it's change, I don't want it, and they just try and, get their back up about it?
Yeah, look, that's the constant challenge of politics, which is, by definition, if a decision is being made at a political level, it's because it involves trade-offs and no one at a lower level can make it. It needs to be attached to someone who's accountable for asking someone to vote for them a couple of years later. And so when you make those decisions, you have to go into it very mindfully and carefully about the implications and what it means and who for. You get a mandate for it. We got a really clear mandate at the election. We said, if you vote for us, we will be doing these things. We will be replacing the RMA. That's part of what you'll be voting for.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it then is straightforward from there, because to your point, yes, sometimes it's very frustrating. Our motivation and what we're trying to achieve isn't heard, but a loud voice over here is heard moaning about a particular aspect of it. And so our constant challenge to ourselves is to make sure we're reaching people with clear communication about what we're doing, why we're doing it. And that's something that we are constantly thinking about, because people have 2.5-year-olds. They don't have time to read the entire newspaper or read our Beehive press releases.
Yeah,
I'm too busy playing with Paw Patrol, Nicola.
You have better things to do. So it's, how do we communicate this in a way that's meaningful, and if people want more information, they can follow up.
I guess one of the challenges around the housing market, though, is historically when house prices go up, Kiwis feel wealthier, the economy does better. Like in terms of our economy, I don't think is it too one-dimensional is the question I'm trying to ask, but do you think, how do we create more depth in our economy where it's not just tied to selling interest rates come down, house prices go up, we all pass around the same dollar?
Yeah, and look, a really interesting observation about the current economic recovery that we're going through is that it is different from some previous economic recoveries where, to your point, you saw house prices taking off, consumers got a bit more confident, they started spending more. This time we're having what the economists really like, which is an export-led recovery. So instead of getting rich from selling to ourselves, New Zealand's growth in recent times has literally been led by us getting better prices and selling more of our things to the world. So that is positive for the country, and eventually that will result in house price growth as well. But the way I think about it is that you actually want an economy where you're getting better at producing services and goods more productively, because that's what will lead to the creation of better paying jobs, which matters not only for the opportunities available to people so that they can work in a cool Weta workshop, or they can work at Rocket Lab, or they can work in an amazing fintech, or, by the way, on a really cool dairy farm with great modern technology. Or the other side of that is, they've got those jobs, but when people are earning more and businesses are more successful, that results in the government having more revenue, which we can then invest in the things we all want: schools, hospitals, roads, police.
Yeah.
So wealth creation for me is the story, and we will not get wealthier just by selling to ourselves. We need to create things for the world.
It was Winston Churchill who said, taxing your way to prosperity is like standing in a bucket and trying to lift it up, right?
Yeah.
Totally. No country has ever taxed itself to prosperity. We can have endless discussions about how to slice the pie better. And those debates could go on forever, and there are lots of different ways you can slice it, but the simpler way that lifts all boats is grow that pie, baby.
Yeah.
Because if we grow it, then everyone can get a bigger slice.
What's next for the New Zealand economy? What are you planning on doing to, we often used to describe, we say this quite a bit, New Zealand is a bit of a rock star economy, and back in the day, and we feel like it's lost that edge a little bit. What's next? What's on the horizon?
Well, the next thing for us is that we are going to be producing goods and services that the world really wants. And our job is to make sure that we don't put up barriers that stop us doing that. And I mean, quite simply, that I think, you can make it a red-blue political game, or you can just look back over 10, 20, 30 years, that we've had a tendency to, as I said with the RMA, put up a lot of red tape that makes it difficult to do things, to make things, to build things. Yet every week I meet businesses in New Zealand doing world-leading, really cool stuff. So, the Rocket Lab story is extraordinary. If you'd gone back 20 years and said, will New Zealand be sending the third biggest number of rockets into space compared with every other country on Earth? No one would have said yes.
Dreaming. Yeah.
That's right. And so when you talk to Peter Beck about, well, what did that involve? One of the things that was really interesting there was that he went to government pretty early and he said, look, if I'm going to do rockets here, which I'm determined to do, we need to get the regulations right and make sure the law doesn't get in my way and slow me down. And I look across New Zealand and there's a number of sectors that can grow more if we get out of the way a bit, whether it's in our agricultural industry, whether it's in our fintech industry, where we're working really closely to make sure that we're allowing for innovation. Those things are going to be important. I'm excited that New Zealand's next phase is going to be moving up that value chain in terms of tech exports. It's the one thing where we don't have to worry about the tyranny of distance. I think we're going to get a lot more value for the food we produce, because we do produce it more efficiently and sustainably than anyone else. And people are so much more conscious of where their food comes from now. And there's so much opportunity for us to add value to those products. It's just a secret sauce for us. And I still think that we have untapped resources. It is possible to mine the ground for resources and do so in an environmentally sustainable way. And here's a stat to think about. In Australia, the average worker to output is 80K or so, but then you look at the mining industry, 800K or so. And so the point is that we have industries that we haven't even tapped yet. So I think our next era is the era of freeing up and going for growth.
Like a big thing is, so like I'm Australian, but I've chosen to live in New Zealand, right?
Good choice.
Tell
your friends.
Yeah, well, and that's my question, Nicola. As Mike spent time overseas, he actually spent time in the Gold Coast with some frosted tips for a period of time, but we don't have to get into that. We do.
We're all maturing.
I'm growing.
He's still working on it.
Yeah.
But we talk to a lot of people where they are moving overseas and looking at Australia, and you look at salaries in comparison to what they can earn in New Zealand. How do we retain more of our great talent in New Zealand? Is it as simple as going, we've got to get these industries going, we've got to get more money into the country, and those things will sort themselves out? Because we want to retain our really good talent, don't we?
Yeah, well, at a base level, we always have to focus on that, because if you really get down to brass tacks with a lot of people about why they're moving to Australia, they will say it's because I can get paid more. Now, how do we make sure we can pay people more? Well, Australia is about a third richer than us. We have to be a wealthier country. How do you get wealthier? You grow faster. How do you grow faster? You need more businesses being created, having the confidence to expand, to hire people, to invest, to do all of those things. So we have to keep our eye on that price. At the same time, I think we should be very proud of how New Zealand is distinguished from Australia in some regards. I still believe that at a kind of global level, we are a safer place. I still believe that in terms of the way that we deliver public services, we should be very proud of our health and education system. There's work that we need to do to improve it, but we're good. We have a natural environment which is pristine and extraordinary. We have a temperate climate and lots of water.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be an issue for the Aussies going forward. We have, I think, a kind of cultural identity that's continuing to grow that people are going to feel attached to. So there's lots of that going on. But ultimately, if you could start a business either in New Zealand or Australia, and you're a really smart person who's going to create great paying jobs, I want the government to be able to look you in the eye and say, it's easier to do business in New Zealand and the lifestyle's better too. And I think we can create that proposition if we get out of our own way.
What do you think the role of government is when you talk about more products, more services? What is the role of government where we've got kind of like free markets and it's about, you want competition, you want people to go out? What do you see your role?
Well, first thing is we have to get the foundations right of macroeconomic management, because if we don't, everyone is screwed. Because if you're borrowing too much and you're spending too much as a government and not being productive in the way you invest that money, well, we know what happens. Inflation goes up. Now, inflation is a killer, because if prices are rising really, really fast, that's very hard on consumers, but it's very hard on businesses too. If inflation gets out of control, interest rates get out of control. If people can't get credit, they can't borrow, it's very hard to get growth happening, and then you get recession. So we have to get those fundamentals right. You need to be able to trust your government that it's not going to spend so much and manage the macroeconomy so badly that the foundations will fall away. Next thing we can do is focus on the enablers of growth. So actually, education system, critical. You've got to have people with reading, writing, maths, financial literacy. And so, we're doing a big repair job on the education system at the moment to make sure it is delivering that to more kids. You've got to make sure you've got competitive business settings, that you're not putting so much red tape up everywhere that it's hard to run a business here, and that your tax settings are fair, all of that sort of thing. You've got to make sure you have research, science and technology settings right so that people can invest in that. The government is the only entity that can go out and sign free trade agreements with the rest of the world so that you can access markets overseas. And we're really the only one that can set the rules to get more cash coming in to invest in Kiwi businesses. And then we have to build the infrastructure. We have to build both the kind of hard physical infrastructure of the roads and that sort of thing. But we also need to be delivering the social infrastructure, hospitals, schools and the like. So we have to do that job really well, and we have to partner with the private sector so they can help us out to do it better wherever possible. So government has a big role, and all of those roles done badly drag the economy back for everyone.
Yeah.
I think about like a big thing I'm picking up during this conversation is, your life would probably be like way easier if we just spent a bunch of money, made people feel really good tomorrow. But I'm definitely picking up the short-term pain, long-term gain idea. I mean, within your role as finance minister, when it's, you're all done with it and you look back on it, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for making this a wealthier country that grew faster and therefore enabled people to have better jobs, better incomes, better choices.
Yeah.
And what I don't want to be in the situation of is looking your 2.5-year-old and my 9-year-old in the eye 20 years from now and saying, yeah, I was there during that generation of politicians that whacked it all on the credit card, maxed out the overdraft, told you it would all be okay, and then you had to clean up the mess.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in that situation.